So, Shannon, men are more privileged in society than women. Why is that?
It's just how it's been for most of our society, and it hasn't really changed that much. I mean, it's slowly changing over time, but it hasn't really flipped that script in our society.
What's like? Give me just one example of
Men having privilege.
Yeah.
I mean, men don't face as much like essay as women do, and they have just more opportunities to in the business world usually advance in their careers.
Do they?
Typically, yes.
I mean, also, it's not clear to me if, like, when it comes to, like, when I think of privilege, I tend to think of something. How can I best put this? When I think of privilege, like, it's something that's granted, right? Like, I'm trying to think if there would be a. Like, so for example, men are more likely to be victims of violent crime. Is it a privilege that women have that they're less likely to be victims of violent crime as compared to men? Would you say that's a female privilege?
I mean, I think that women do face a lot of violent crime in our society as well. So I think it's just violent crime is the issue, not as much as a privilege for women because women still have to deal with it.
Right, but men also are essayed, so...
Yeah. But it's different because it's like for women, part of the assaulting is because they're women. They're women.
So just to be clear, when bad things happen to women, it's because they're women, and when bad things happen to men,
I would say more specifically when it comes to essay, it's a way for men to basically like control and have dominance over women, usually without their consent. So it is something that because you're a woman, you're more subjugated to than if you're a man, you have the privilege of usually not being.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to really go down. I don't want to go down a deep rabbit hole of like the essay topic. I was always confused though, and look, perhaps it's the case. Maybe there's studies on it. I'd be curious to see them. This idea that it's about power, like maybe it is, but to me, the thing that would make the most sense is it's like just a piece of shit who's horny and wants to have sex.
But like what gets them going, like what makes them horny? I think it's like the thrill of the power that they have over that other person, right? It's psychological a bit than just the like physical.
Yeah, there could be like maybe they get off to like, well, what if it's not about power? They get off to harming somebody.
That is a power dynamic, though, because you're causing harm to someone. They're weaker than you in that instance.
Yeah. But in any case, you mentioned when I said that men are more likely to be victims of violent crime, you said, well, but so are women also are victims of violent crime, but they're not as likely to be victims of violent crime as men are.
Wait, is essay not violent crime? Sorry.
It's a component. Well, I would say it's...
Yeah, it falls under the umbrella.
It sounds like it's not counted in that for some reason. Like essay isn't considered the violent crime, but the different violent crime.
No, they counted in the statistics, and overall, my understanding is overall, including all violent crimes, men are more likely to be victims of violent crime.
Interesting. The numbers that I saw were the other way, but I'd love to see that. Yeah.
It's pretty well established. You can look at crime statistics.
Yeah, but that's why I wasn't sure if essay was in there.
Victims of violent crime,
or if they put that under DV.
The other thing, though, is the definition of grape, for example.
Yeah.
In certain jurisdictions, like men can't be victims of grape.
That's awful.
Like.
That's terrible. Yeah.
If a woman grapes a man, you might not believe that that's actually possible.
No, it's possible.
It's definitely possible.
But the actual definition of it, they don't consider a woman forcing herself onto a man. They wouldn't consider that grape.
Do you know why they
That's terrible.
don't?
Well, I think it's just the specific definition. It's like there's like a penetrative component to the crime. So I suppose like a man could grape under that specific jurisdiction. A man could grape another man. is minor. But even some of the definitions include the term like vagina, for example.
Yeah.
So
maybe that just needs to be
varies
updated.
based on jurisdiction, but it skews the data a little bit. But I don't want to linger too long on that topic just because it's kind of it's kind of a buzzkill. But men are more privileged in society than. Well, I'm moving on to Moon. Why is that, Moon?
Oh, definitely like in careers.
Careers, okay.
Even like with health. I mean, we talked about the fact that women have periods. I mean, I know guys get prostate cancer and other things too, but even just having the genitalia of a woman, we get ovarian cancer, cervical cancer, like just all kinds of benefits sometimes, to being a man that we women just don't have,
Okay. What about you?
I'm not too sure about like wage gaps and things like that.
Doesn't exist, but.
So yeah, I don't know anything about it. I think it's more like for me socially, I guess, like just social aspects benefit men more than women, as well as just like general hate towards them, and also the fact that there's like the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which is like kind of crappy, and then there's just other things that are just very oppressive.
Okay, there's a lot there. I won't be able to make counter arguments for all. Well, I could make counter arguments for all of them, but for the sake of time, I can't. It's not clear to me, at least with the abortion argument that you made, that has anything to do with men being more privileged, because males have no reproductive rights whatsoever. If the woman wants to get the abortion, the man can't say anything about it. If the woman decides to keep the child, the man can't do anything about it. So, I mean, men have zero reproductive rights.
Yeah, and I think that, it's unfair. And I think that's why it needs to be, like, when it comes to abortion, it needs to be a, like, lengthy discussion between you and your partner where you guys really weigh the pros and cons and things like that.
But you would agree that even if there was a lengthy conversation and the woman was leaning towards get the abortion and the man was leaning towards keep the child, there's nothing that the man could actually do to force her to keep the child. If she wanted the abortion, she can go get the abortion. Assuming she's in a state where abortion is legal.
Yeah, that part.
Right.
Oh,
what about you? Why are men more privileged in society than women?
Why are you talking about why?
Or how?
Like how?
How,
okay.
rather, yeah,
Like
my bad.
in China, employers will still ask about your marriage status, like at interviews. And like when I graduated from my bachelor, some of the boys from my class, they didn't have good grades at all, but they got really good jobs just because, like, for English major, if you're a boy, like, they will just take you because all the others were girls, but they want boys.
I'm not really particularly well versed when it comes to like feminism in China or the gender specifics in China. I am aware that there are certain sexist practices in China. For example, I believe with the one-child policy, there seemed to have been some preference towards male boy babies, but I'm just not well versed enough in the Chinese gender politics or whatever to really be able to address that adequately. But I'll just say this, though.
What do you got?
I'll just say this. I'll just throw out my favorite argument on this. All of women's collective grievances just fall completely flat in the face of a singular, sole male grievance, and that's war.